I woke up one morning, grabbed my coffee, and stepped outside like I always do. But something was off. I glanced up at my roof and noticed a couple of strange-looking boxes attached near the edge. At first, I thought maybe my internet provider had done some kind of upgrade without telling me. But then it hit me, why would they install equipment on my roof without my permission? Curious, I started looking closer. Wires ran down the side, neatly tucked away but still noticeable. It didn't take long before I found out the truth. The HOA had installed Wi-Fi repeaters on my house. Without asking, without telling me, just decided my roof was free real estate for their little project. Now, I don't know about you, but that didn't sit right with me. I pay for my house, my space, my electricity, so why should the HOA get to slap their equipment up there like they own the place? I had two choices: complain and hope they removed it, or flip the script and make them regret it. So, I did what any reasonable person would do. I switched the internet provider, took control of their connection, and made them pay for the bandwidth they were stealing. They thought they were getting free Wi-Fi coverage. Instead, they walked right into my plan. How? Well, let me tell you. At first, I didn't think much of it. I had noticed a few wires running along the side of my house, but I figured they belonged to my existing setup. It wasn't until I stepped into my backyard and caught a better view of my roof that I saw them two gray boxes, neatly mounted near the peak. They weren't there before. I knew that for a fact. Still, I wasn't going to jump to conclusions. Maybe the internet company had done something. Maybe a previous owner had left them, and I somehow never noticed. But when I asked around, that's when things got weird. A couple of my neighbors mentioned how the HOA had been improving the neighborhood's Wi-Fi coverage. One guy even said, "Yeah, they put up repeaters so everyone gets better speeds. It's about time." That's when it clicked. I called the HOA to get some answers. Of course, that turned into a complete runaround. The first person I spoke to acted like they had no idea what I was talking about. The second person, after I pressed a little harder, finally admitted, "Oh yeah, we added some signal boosters on a few homes to improve coverage." I asked if they had planned on telling me about it, considering my roof was one of the lucky few. Their response? "It's for the good of the community." Oh, really? So apparently, my roof, my electricity, and my home were now community property? I asked if they had permission to install them. Silence. I asked if they were at least paying for the electricity it was using. More silence. That's when I realized these guys weren't just cutting corners. They were straight up freeloading off my property without even telling me. I could have fought them on the spot. I could have demanded they take everything down immediately. But where's the fun in that? No, if they wanted to play dirty, I was going to make sure they paid for it in the end. I wasn't about to let the HOA get away with using my roof like it was their personal tech hub. But instead of storming into their office and demanding they take it down, I decided to play the long game. If they were going to use my property without permission, then I was going to make sure they paid for it without even realizing it. The first thing I did was check the HOA bylaws. I wanted to see if there was any rule that actually gave them the right to do this. Turns out there wasn't. Nowhere did it say they could install equipment on private property without approval. That meant if this ever turned into a legal fight, I had the upper hand. Next, I needed to understand exactly how Wi-Fi repeaters worked. After a little research, I realized something important. These repeaters weren't providing Wi-Fi on their own. They were just boosting an existing signal. That meant they had to be connected to a primary network somewhere. In other words, if I could control the main internet source, I could control their entire system. That's when I got my idea. Instead of just unplugging the devices, or demanding they take them down, I decided to switch my internet provider and reroute all their traffic through a connection I controlled. If they wanted to piggyback off my house, fine, but they were going to do it on my terms. Now, I had to set the trap carefully. I upgraded to a new internet plan under a different provider, which meant I got a fresh connection with a brand new IP address. Then, I set up my own router with monitoring tools to track how much bandwidth was being used. I also throttled the speeds, making sure I could adjust how much data was flowing through at any time. The best part? I made sure the change was invisible. As far as the HOA knew, their system was still running smoothly, except now, they were unknowingly connecting through my controlled network. Finally, it was time for the switch. I disconnected my old provider and activated the new one. For the first couple of days, everything seemed normal. Nobody suspected a thing. The HOA's internet coverage was still working, the repeaters were still running, and the neighborhood was still happily using the Wi-Fi without knowing what had happened. But what they didn't realize was that I now had complete control over their connection, and I was about to make them feel it. At first, everything seemed normal. The HOA had no idea that their precious Wi-Fi repeaters were now running through my controlled network. But it didn't take long before the cracks started to show. The first complaints started trickling in within a week. At peak hours, when half the neighborhood was trying to stream movies or hop on video calls, the internet would slow to a crawl. People started grumbling in the HOA's community group, asking if anyone else was having issues. A few blamed their personal providers, but soon a pattern emerged. The areas that were supposed to be getting enhanced Wi-Fi from the repeaters were struggling the most. Then came the serious HOA meeting. Apparently, the connection had gotten so unreliable that they needed to investigate technical difficulties. They sent out an email about unforeseen service interruptions and assured everyone they were working on it. I read that email while sipping my coffee, knowing full well I was the one controlling the switch. And that's when my poker face came into play. Every time a neighbor complained to me directly, I acted just as confused as they were. Oh man, that's weird. Maybe the provider's having issues? I even suggested that they call the HOA to report the problem just to stir the pot a little more. Behind the scenes, though, I was watching them struggle. They sent out technicians to check the repeaters, only to find out that technically everything was working fine. They tested different devices, restarted the network, even tried adjusting the bandwidth settings. Nothing worked. Why? Because I had set it up so that the speeds would fluctuate just enough to be annoying, but not enough to make it obvious that someone was tampering with the connection. Then came the moment of truth. Eventually, the HOA must have put 2 and 2 together. Someone realized that the repeaters were connected to a new network, my network. That's when they tried to confront me. They sent a very polite but firm email asking if I had changed my internet provider. I played dumb. Oh yeah, I switched to a better plan a while back. Why do you ask? That's when they tried to pull the legal card. They claimed I had disrupted a community service and that I needed to restore the connection immediately. I just laughed. They had no legal standing. In fact, they were the ones who had broken the rules by installing the equipment on my property without my consent. And now, they were at my mercy. Now that the HOA knew I controlled their precious Wi-Fi, it was time to make them pay. Literally. I put together an official bill for bandwidth usage, calculating how much data they had been running through my connection. Of course, I added a little extra for an inconvenience fee. After all, they had been using my property without permission. If they wanted to keep their setup, they had to pay up or pack up. When I sent the invoice to the HOA board, they were furious. They fired back with the same tired excuse. but it was for the community. I reminded them that my house wasn't public property, and that if they wanted to use my electricity and internet, they needed a legal agreement which they never had. I even attached a copy of the HOA bylaws, highlighting the sections where they had violated their own rules. Instead of admitting defeat, the HOA did something hilariously stupid. They tried to remove the repeaters in secret. Late one night, I got an alert from my security system. When I checked the cameras, I saw 2 HOA board members and some maintenance guy sneaking around my house with ladders and tools. They were trying to steal their own equipment back without paying me, without notifying me, and without fixing any damage they caused. I let them struggle for a while before stepping outside with a flashlight. "Need some help?" I asked, watching them freeze like deer caught in headlights. One of them mumbled something about a misunderstanding, but I just laughed. I told them I had everything recorded and that I'd be happy to share the footage with a lawyer if they wanted to play games. At that point, they had no choice. They either had to pay me for the bandwidth they had stolen or remove every piece of equipment and repair my roof. They chose the second option. Within a week, the repeaters were gone, my roof was patched up, and the HOA never brought up community Wi-Fi again. The best part? The internet went back to normal for everyone except for the HOA. Their office, which had been relying on the repeaters, now had worse service than ever. Maybe next time they'll think twice before trying to pull a fast one. After everything went down, the HOA tried to act like nothing ever happened. They never admitted they were wrong. No apology, no email acknowledging their mistake, just pure silence. But I knew they felt the burn because, within a month, they introduced new policies about obtaining homeowner consent before installing community equipment. Gee, I wonder what inspired that rule? The best part? They avoided me like the plague. The same HOA members who used to nitpick about mailbox colors or grass height suddenly had nothing to say when they saw me. It was clear they weren't going to try anything like that again. The neighbors, though? Split reactions. Some of them thought it was hilarious. I got a few knowing nods, and even a couple of nice work comments. Others? Not so happy. A few neighbors complained that their free high-speed Wi-Fi was gone, and they had to actually pay for decent internet now. One guy even said, "Man, couldn't you have just let it slide?" Nope. Not my problem. At the end of the day, I had no regrets. If the HOA had just asked for permission or offered to cover the costs, none of this would have happened. But they thought they could take advantage of me, and learned the hard way that they couldn't. Moral of the story: don't mess with people's property. And if you do, be prepared to pay.